Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. We've got a text from Deb indicating she's apparently seen some news reports indicating that there were two pilots. Remember, both of them with Muslim names. Now, I'm not saying anything. You can't draw any conclusions from that. But these are experienced pilots. They have Muslim names. And they would know where the transponder switches were. They would know where the other devices were to turn off that provide the capacity for radar and other devices to track them and to identify their location. And they would be familiar with this route. So it makes it look like this plane wasn't just like hijacked, but it was commandeered. If it was commandeered by somebody who knew enough about one of these Boeing planes to know something about the technology and know how to find that route, which is a well-traveled route to get to the Middle East. And that's kind of spooky when you think about it, that this plane, last we know, was on a course that would take it to the Middle East. And it could fly for 2,500 miles. So we'll have to see. Apparently news reports indicating that the pilot, or one of the two pilots at least, had a simulator in his home that is identical to the type of plane that he was flying. So he may have the opportunity to kind of do dry runs on all of this and to practice what he was about to do. So it's a possibility this Malaysian plane may be the newest human-guided suicide missile. That's how this piece in Town Hall is addressed. Is this Malaysian plane the newest human-guided suicide missile? So evidence, again, we don't know. I mean, this thing could be at the bottom of the sea somewhere. We don't know. But you've got all of these very suggestive kind of hints that indicate that this wasn't an accident, that it was deliberate, that was engineered, commandeered, that turning off these tracking devices was deliberate. It was done manually. So, and the thing that to me is the most disturbing is that the flight path, it wasn't a random flight path when they diverted from their path to Beijing. This was not a random alternative. They weren't just kind of flying around looking for somewhere to go. This is from Reuters. These routes are taken by commercial planes flying from Southeast Asia to the Middle East. So, that's pretty suspicious to me, heading to the Middle East with a hijacked plane. You imagine the amount of explosive you could pack onto that plane. And, we were talking about this morning, you'd have an issue, obviously, escaping detection because it's not going to be invisible to military radar. And so everybody's military radar now is going to be on high alert for this thing. And any country that's got the capacity, this thing gets anywhere close to their airspace, they're going to scramble jets and blow this thing out of the sky before they take a chance. So I think the element of surprise clearly is going to be missing. So their only opportunity is going to be to fly it somewhere where they know there isn't sufficient air security, or they're not going to have time to react. You think about flying this thing into Israel and blowing something up in Israel. Now, Israelis have the most sophisticated missile defense system, virtually the best pilots in the world, maybe outside of our own military. And they're not messing around. They're not going to take any chances with the lives of their citizens. So I don't know that would be successful, but that might be one of the places where they target. It's interesting that Malaysia was originally denying that this plane continued to fly for 4 hours, but then then Boeing said, look, the airline, Malaysia Airlines, did not purchase the package. We have a package available through Boeing that will enable the airline company to monitor the airplane's data through the satellite system. Malaysia Airlines didn't buy that package. So the Malaysia Airlines had no way to have access to the information that Boeing had because of the devices that were installed on board. So anyway, possibilities now diverted to be used for some other purpose. Almost certain now that those transponders were disabled manually. All right, well, let's see if we can grab some phone calls. 888-589-8840, number to call, 888-589-8840. Let's start with Carrion in Hope Mill, North Carolina. Welcome. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mr. Fisher.
Hi, how are you?
I wanted to just talk about the female aspect of everything that
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
talking about with the articles today.
Yes, ma'am.
I spent probably a good half of my life in the military,
Uh-huh.
and it is a male-dominant atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Where I have the concern is not necessarily that women are trying to take over leadership positions or step up into it and get that corner office,
Mm-hmm.
but that we see that there is a lack of responsibility on the male part to step into those positions and take the responsibility.
Well, let
And
me
like
ask
you,
let me ask you this, because this is an intriguing thing that you're bringing up. Because you might have a combination. I want you to respond to this because you've been around it. You've seen a kind of you've operated and lived in a command structure. You know what I've seen a lot of times is males have this built-in chivalry instinct. We want to be kind to women. We don't want to be harsh with them. We don't want to beat them down. We want to respect them. We want to honor them. We want to shelter them. We want to protect them. And then if you've got a woman in your environment that's very aggressive and is kind of looking to seize some responsibility maybe that you have or some authority that you have, guys will tend to defer to that because they don't want to be mean to the women in their world. So how much of it do you think was just kind of timidity on the part of men, and how much of it was men who are kind of intimidated by women as kind of a learned response because they want to be nice to women? That's part of the instinct that God's built into them. You have any reaction to that possibility?
yes. Well, there were normally two responses to women who are aggressively seeking authority, power, control over whatever it is, whether it be an assignment or a position. We were called the B word. It wasn't bossy. Or the males would cower, not necessarily in fear of the women, but in fear of retribution.
In fear of retribution, meaning that they would get in trouble?
Ostracized by the other females, that they would be looked down upon, that they would be set on the outskirts.
All right.
Or classified as a woman hater.
Oh, so that'd be enough to kind of that would be enough to intimidate them and to just kind of keeping their counsel to themselves. So
Right.
it was sort of like it was kind of a fight or flight thing for the guys. If a woman is going to come on pretty strong and pretty aggressive, you either stand up to that, in which case you might be tagged as a woman hater, or you just simply retreat. So it's fight or flight kind of thing for the males.
Yes.
And so they're kind of in a no-win situation. If they stand up to that kind of aggressiveness, then they get tagged as a sexist. If they don't, then they're weak and indecisive, and that doesn't look good in the military.
Right. And the flip side of that is when women are in that aggressive mode, I'm fighting to get something done, and I'm barking orders because it's my job to make sure it gets done. We don't get really called bossy in the military. We get called the other B word.
The stronger B word.
Yes. So I don't know why they're worrying about being called bossy. I would much rather be called that.
Bossy than what women are called in the military. Well, let me ask you this. This is kind of a delicate question, but it gets kind of right down to it. Do you think that we ought to have women, based on what you've observed, just practically, just pragmatically, the way the dynamics have worked from your observation when you've seen it in action? Let's set aside all the theory. Let's set aside all the gender theory and all of that debate. Just looking pragmatically from the outside, when you have women in the military in authority over men, how well, practically speaking, does that work?
For the most part, it works well.
Okay.
Women are capable of proving their ability to stand their own. We are just as strong mentally, not as strong physically, but just as strong mentally and technical-wise. We can stand our own. But the typical response is women are more apt to stand and have to prove their abilities more so than a man walking in of the same rank into the same position.
Okay, say that again for me. I didn't catch the first part about what a woman is likely to do.
A woman, she has to prove her
Oh, I see.
ability.
So she feels that need to try to prove herself because she's kind of moving into a man's world, and a guy doesn't necessarily feel that same dynamic.
Right. So I think that women will do well. They do well in the military. We're fully capable. We're not strong. I don't believe in allowing the women into combat arms situations. But at the same time, I don't know that there's many. I didn't run into not one single woman my whole time in the military that even desired to be
did not want to be in combat.
No.
You know, it's interesting, and I've seen, they're putting together this experimental team right now to kind of test the ability of women to serve in combat. So they're going to put them through all the rigorous stuff, and I think the report's not going to be completed until the fall of 2015. But what I've read, Karen, is that most of the women, I mean the percentage of women in the military that actually want to go into combat, I mean it's down around 10% or less. It's just not something that they long to do.
No, I spent 21 years in, and I did not once ever run into a woman. Now, we will jump out of planes, and we will do the fun stuff, but we're not going to go trying to be in an infantry unit. It's just not what we want. We want a strong man to stand in front of us. We want, whether they can verbalize that or not, that's what we want.
All right, Karen, listen, I appreciate the call. I'm out of time. We got a news break coming. I appreciate your call very much. Very insightful. Carry on. Thank you. We'll be right back after the news. Stay with us. Focal Point AFR Talk.